Third world countries have many issues with gaining access to clean drinking water. This is a major problem that can impact the health of many people throughout the world, so it's important that we learn about the issues of this problem so we can find ways to solve the problem. Before diving into these issues, it's important to define what a third world country is. First, second, and third world countries were first defined during the Cold War. They classified each country as to how they lined up in the war. However, today they classify economic status. For example, we see that first world countries are the US and European allies. These countries are democracies, capitalist economies, and have a high standard of living. As we move on to the second world countries, we see that they include communist countries like China, Russia, and Cuba. These countries can also be classified by being a little less developed than first world countries, but more developed than third world countries. Lastly, we have third world countries, which are countries that neither align with either of these groups, and they're least developed out of all the countries. These countries include Afghanistan, Nigeria, Myanmar, Kenya, etc. This is a map of how each country classifies. The green countries are first world countries, the red countries are second world countries, and the yellow are third world countries. This should give you an idea of where each of these classifications place within our world. We'll be focusing on third world countries for the rest of the presentation. Now that we are looking at clean water access, we need to look at what defines clean water. From the regulations used by the EPA, we can define safe drinking water as water with no harmful substances, no pathogenic microorganisms, and no suspended matter. On top of that, the water can't have any unpalatable taste or odor. It needs to be clear, colorless, and well aerated. These are just the basic aspects to what makes water safe to drink. There are many more details within the EPA standards to what makes clean water, so if you're interested, you can dive more into the specifics there. Next, we can explore the many issues the scarcity of water has caused. Starting off, there are 2.2 billion people that lack safe drinking water. 11% of the global population does not have access to clean water. 80% of illness in developing countries come from inadequate water sanitation. 4.2 billion people lack safely managed sanitation services. 1.3 million children under the age of 5 die per year from diarrhea that is often caused by contaminated drinking water. Lack of clean water can also impact agriculture because when access to water is limited, agriculture has to compete with domestic, industrial, and environmental uses of that water. I also thought it was important to note that agriculture accounts for 70% of global water withdrawals. Before doing this research, I was surprised by the amount of water that we use for agriculture and irrigation within our countries. Countries have a hard time solving these issues because of poverty, climate change, poor governance, and water shortages. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is an example of a third world country dealing with water issues. The GDP per capita of the DRC is 560 USD, which makes it one of the poorest countries in the world. Even though their land is rich with resources, war and poor governance has led them to a life of poverty. Within the Democratic Republic of the Congo, 51 million people drink unclean water. 1 in 5 people within the DRC don't have adequate toilet facilities either. This causes open air defecation, which leads to contamination of streams and rivers. Some villages within the DRC area are simply too poor to drill wells in the ground. Because of this, people are having to travel distances on foot to get water. These distances usually aren't small. And in return, they come back from these trips with an insufficient amount of water because they can only carry so much back with them. It's countries like these that encourage us to find new ways to bring water into poor communities. I've developed a list of methods to get clean water that can help third world countries back up to their feet. First on our list is rainwater harvesting. As you can see in the picture at the bottom right, rainwater harvesting relies on a system of collection, storage, treatment, which is usually through filtering and boiling water and usage. Next, we have the method of gray water recycling. This method is simply retreating bathing water for other purposes. Note that in this method, the water must not contain fecal matter. Next is the SOTUS method, which is treating water with sunlight. After that, we have the use of atmospheric water generators that draw water out of humid air. Desalination is the next method. This is the conversion of salt water to fresh water. However, this can be a very costly process. Lastly, we have life straws, which use a filtering system to drink water through a straw. These are my sources, and I hope you guys learned something about clean water in third world countries.